Okay, when is the next class? Oh my god. The definition of foreign direct investment is included in the International Conference for the Settlement of Investment Disputes, the ICSID, ICSID, and it's the same abbreviation of the International Court for the Settlement of Investment Disputes, which is part of the Bretton Woods institutions in Washington, World Bank, International Monetary Fund, and a few others. And that brings me to the to a very concrete tool, being investment treaties. So we have the soft law, the Monterey, the Doha documents in which the recipe is basically the obligation. We, the world community, decide to approach development in a 7-step recipe. That's one. And then a very important source of law, to make it concrete, is a bilateral or multilateral investment treaty. And in the investment treaty, there are basically 3 things laid down. And there's a certain parallel to trade law. And the 3 things are, 1, that both economies open up to each other's investment. So there's no rule of law that says a foreign investor is having access to your economy. So there's no customary rule stating so. So a sovereign state is sovereign also in view of foreign investors. So if you conclude an investment treaty, the first thing you state, or you agree on between the states, is your investors are welcome in my country. That's 1. 2, almost all investment treaties agree on a dispute settlement mechanism. And the dispute settlement mechanism is the arbitration court in Washington, the ICSID, as in the International Court for the Settlement of Investment Disputes, which is basically a cousin of the Permanent Court of Arbitration down here in the Peace Palace. So it's a little secretariat with staff, and per case they hire attorneys at law, former statesmen, business people to form a arbitral panel who then decide. And then I want you to realize that in such a dispute settlement, one party is a state and the other party is the investor. So the dispute is always, almost always, that the state is sort of crunching the investor, changing the rules halfway, that initially only 50% of the employees should be local, and then after Christmas all of a sudden it should be 99%. These types of disputes, or tax holidays, that the new government says, we don't like this tax holiday. And then you have 2 options in terms of dispute settlement. A foreign direct investor could go to a local court, because, hey, rule of law, so there are courts in the territory in which you invest. So if you have a problem, you have to go to the court. And then sue the state. And then the thinking is, well, but the state owns the court, so how likely is it that this foreign investor is getting a fair trial in the local court? And that is why the international neutral exit in Washington is then seen as the solution. Footnote, there's critique, because it's the same 10 biggest companies with more resources than the 50 states that are on the other side of the dispute, also in terms of the quality of attorneys at law they can hire and so forth. So quite often those host countries lose because they have lousy lawyers, or they hire lousy lawyers, and the investors have much more tricks and other resources to crunch the host country. And so that is sort of the critique on international arbitration where it comes to investment. And I want to tell you that the European Union is nothing more or less than a multilateral investment treaty. Because it's a treaty that says, we welcome your capital, free movement of capital, and we welcome your goods. That's then sort of trade treaty. But the internal market, free movement of capital, is basically a multilateral investment treaty. And then EU law says, and then all the corporate citizens should be treated equally, no discrimination. And that's the third topic of an investment treaty. That is, that then the foreign investors should at least be treated equally to local investors. So that the way to establish a foreign company is not more bureaucratic or complicated than establishing a local one. Basically what we did in the European Union, and also the NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Association, is also a multilateral investment treaty where it says capital is welcome across the board. How could you then end up in a dispute? That is then by state action. And so if you have a dispute with a local employee, you have to go to a local labor court. So that's not the disputes we talk about. We talk about the relationship of the investor vis-à-vis the host state and the host economy. And how can you mess up as a host state? Well, let's divide it along the branches of government. And so the executive branch can frustrate you by not allowing you in the country as a boss. And say, well, your visa is not correct, please go home. At the border. Or that the local police during a demonstration is standing there and saying, well, good for you, terrible foreign investor. And then your executive branch is failing in protecting the investors. The legislative branch can non-comply with the treaty by changing the rules. By changing the rules along the game. Examples given, amount of local employees required, tax holidays, and so forth. And the third wrongful act by a state could be the judicial branch, where wrong judgments are issued that are discrimination compared to local investors and so forth. And so that is, if you talk about the disputes, then these types of disputes we talk about. And then the rules on the official development assistance are not well developed, because the international community only go as far as the Monterey and the Doha instruments, where official development assistance can play a catalytic role in assisting developing countries in removing constraints to sustain inclusive and equitable growth, such as enhancing social, institutional, and physical infrastructure, promoting foreign direct investment, trade and technology, improving health and education, foster gender equality, preserving the environment, and eradicating poverty. So this is not a hard law rule. So the promise is, okay, let's invest 0.7% of GDP and let's channel it in these catalytic roles. Infrastructure, hospitals. Why? Because foreign direct investors are not that interested to create highways, as long as you cannot have the traffic paid. And then, what is your business model to create a highway in another country? And then there's no possibility of earning it back. So in the next lecture we will look in a case study. So take your law collection and look at the Laos case. And then we will apply these various theoretical concepts on that case. That concludes this workshop lecture. I give you 5 minutes break so that Mr. Bunchu can install his slides, and please be back in time so that you're not doing to him what you do to me, in dripping in as you please. 5 minutes.